Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Main Event as we finish up in season 06-07 of the UEFA Champions League. I'm joined as always by my two friends, partners, co-hosts, Adam Thornton. How are we doing?
Very well, thank you. It feels like it is the end of an era here as far as AC Milan are concerned, so it's a nice little chance to pause because I think more than most, we're now at 15 years worth of shows, and they've definitely dominated most of it, I would say, certainly the good bits, so it's a nice little goodbye to them.
And more importantly, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, thank you. Yes, got a bit of a sciatica / back issue, which means long recordings are not ideal. But I'm feeling a bit better now, so I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Good man. David Edgar's here. How are we doing, David?
I'm good, thank you, lads. Nice to be here.
Okay, we've got two semi-finals and that final, and yes, spending a bit of time on a Milan side that I think we've talked about before, maybe slightly underrated, perhaps because of the drop-off, which we'll obviously talk about as well. Let's get the other semi-final out of the way then. Chelsea and Liverpool locking horns again 2 years on after that famous ghost goal and the way to Istanbul. First leg at Stamford Bridge again. And David, Chelsea get what Jose would want then, a 1-0 win. No away goals, so they hold that ace in the pack on the trip to Anfield. Pretty much job done in a season where the signs of fragility are there. No league championship. They will win the FA Cup, the first at Wembley Stadium against Manchester United. But at half time of this tie, it's all good.
Yeah, and I must admit, I thought that would be very difficult to turn around, and even for Liverpool, even at Anfield, because I just didn't see Chelsea not scoring up there. But these games were super tense, and I think there was a little bit of right, okay, we're going to put this right. The ghost goal got brought up a lot, and clearly it was something that it still does rankle with both Chelsea and Mourinho all these years later. So it was very fresh in the mind. And I think there was just a clear understanding that they were a better side than Liverpool, and that this very much could be their time. And when you think about the rise of Chelsea to being, as you say, halfway through a Champions League semi-final and really looking like they are the side to beat. They are going to, this is them. It almost feels like a culmination, a coronation, whatever you want to put it, that is going to take place now with them. But the thing I remember about these games is just the overwhelming tension. Now, these are two sides and two fan bases who just do not like each other. And you can tell. And that the players are more creative and better than what you witness in this match. But it is very, very much a case of we don't concede for both sides. Chelsea push on that little bit more, the other home team, but they do have more attacking strength. You would expect them to. And when they get the goal and they get to the end, Liverpool with a kind of a brief dalliance towards the end, I must admit, I think we all felt that, how long can this Liverpool side really keep going in this competition? Because it didn't seem capable. We've mentioned before, if those 11 players or 16, 22, whatever we call it, are playing for another club, they probably don't get here. This is a DNA-inspired Liverpool as well as on the pitch. But I just felt after the first leg, no, this is... That they're going to go up there, they're going to get a goal, and they'll be really professional. They know the mistake they made the last time. They're not going to be spooked by the famous Anfield noise. They are going to go there and do this professionally and coolly and coldly, and it just didn't turn out that way.
Adam, David mentions tension there, and it absolutely is in evidence, but not in the early stages of that game at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea are all over them. They try and do, I guess, what Liverpool, I think, would later do to so many European teams, just use that atmosphere, use that kind of whirlwind, maybe not developing that past one goal right enough, but they were great value for their kind of half-time lead.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's one of those occasions where You have got your goal, and it's just you're expecting then, aren't you? When you think about Chelsea where they are, you think about Drogba getting that goal. I think every single possible minute of a first half, I've said that's a good time to score before, probably on this podcast. But at that point where it's sort of getting to the point where you're thinking, we could do a goal before half time, and then one appears. I think that really helps, particularly because.
Did you think, Adam, as I did, the timing of the goal, that'll settle the crowd because they're obviously a bit nervous what happened, and I fully expected Chelsea to go on and add to that. I must admit, I didn't think that in a straight race over 2 games that this Liverpool side could keep up with them.
No, I think that's fair. I think you're spot on. So yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think it is just one of those situations, like I mentioned. Like I said, there is never a bad time to get a first goal, but I just think sometimes it sets the precedent for sure.
Yeah, Joe Cole with it. He liked to go against Liverpool. It's a beautiful goal. That bubble burst in at Anfield, Adam, on the return. Daniel Agger, I guess, with the equaliser, but putting Liverpool kind of back in that. And that's, I guess, where the tension starts to really set in, ends up in the penalty shoot, of course. As we record now, 24, 25, is there a modern day equivalent of this? We're very familiar. This is the second time in 3 years they will get another bite at it in the season forthcoming. But where this tension absolutely reigns supreme, because the Champions League to me, modern day, feels a lot more open, just in general.
It certainly does. I think that's been something that I've really enjoyed over the last, I don't know, I was going to say maybe the last 10 years. I remember obviously the Barcelona Bayern Munich games where it was like an annihilation on either side, but those aren't necessarily those sort of big tense battles like you said, but it's sort of opened up, I think, since then. Maybe excusing a kind of year or two around about COVID. So with that, I guess when it is so open, and there is such a variance there in terms of great games, great teams, we probably missed that long run thing, like you said, that here are the best 2 teams in Europe going at it. The last would obviously be the kind of Barcelona Real Madrid piece that I know we've spoken about before, but we didn't see that in a final, certainly, and we never quite seen it in that sort of way. And then the other example that I can think of off the bat, which never really got tense, I guess, would be Liverpool Man City of the last 5 or 6 years. But it was all...
But they were wild, Adam, at times.
It was all quite... Yeah, but it was all quite... again, it was not much really happening in the European scene either. It was all mostly domestic, wasn't it? So I think you're right. I think that missing something that's got a bit of aggro, a bit of bad blood. There's obviously teams that have played each other loads. We've spoken about them here. Bayern Munich, Juventus.
I think
PSG.
Bayern Munich, Real had something kind of similar going on. Those games, they could be a wee bit more chaotic than Liverpool Chelsea, but I think they definitely felt like 2 heavyweights don't see each other often, obviously, because they don't play in the same league. But the Anelka goal and the kind of revenge pretty instantly, tight margins, that had a similar kind of feeling to this. And the Benítez Mourinho dynamic as well, Adam.
Yeah.
And not a lot of love lost there either.
Which helps. I think it needs to be, for me, that type of tension needs to seep into more than one competition. I might be way off there, but I feel like it needs to be, this team has won midweek. What is that going to mean for when this team plays X team in the league at the weekend? When you then go back to your domestic league, I think you do kind of lose it a little bit. So it would be quite good if there was one thing I could wish, it would be if we get some sort of tension like that in the Premier League. I guess one of these long running feuds that would be good, that we've probably not really had for a while. And if that seeps into the European stage as well, then that could be quite interesting. Yeah,
I think in this period you've got a Liverpool side who were kind of reduced in terms of their ability to compete at the top level. Like they're much further on now as we record in 2024 than they were in this. And Chelsea, as we mentioned, were sort of Aravisti side. But honestly, we'd seen Blackburn, but never anything like this. Never anything like this. And I think there was that resentment from Liverpool that obviously they've got the rivalry with United that exists and forever will. But I think had this been Arsenal, for example, I don't think you would have felt this rivalry. Because it was everywhere. It was from managers and it was from players and it was in the stands and it was noticeable. And of course, we saw what happened later when Benítez goes to Chelsea and their fans just no, we are not going to accept this under any circumstances. And I think a large part of it was that Chelsea fans will have grown up with Liverpool being the grand side, which they were throughout the 70s and 80s, and then the kind of that feeling that you're sort of looked down on, and you are to a degree because you don't have history, you're not you haven't done it the organic way, the way that we did, kind of forgetting that Liverpool chucked about a lot of money at times in the 70s and 80s. But I think there was that sort of sense that we stand for something bigger, which annoyed the Chelsea fans, and it was based on frustration and fear as well from the Liverpool supporters. But what it did make for was this cocktail, and as I say, you've got two managers who just clearly dislike each other, and both, correctly viewed as tactical stars, both correctly viewed with bringing different ideas to the Premiership, and I think both wanting to prove their superiority over the other. So it made for not exactly roller coaster matches, but you couldn't take your eyes off these because they always as well had a kind of simmering undercurrent of aggro that it would only take a spark and everything was going to go off. It was captivating, maybe more than it was things that make for great YouTube videos afterwards. But when you were watching them, not knowing the result and knowing it could go either way, then there was a tension that was, it came through even off the TV screen.
I mean, Chelsea, they kind of did they go aerially? I think they probably did in the second half at Stamford Bridge, and again, Mourinho would have gone to sleep thinking, yeah, that's 1-0, it's absolutely fine. In the end, he did need more. Adam, that Agger goal from a set piece right from the training ground, but maybe not the kind of Agger goal you would expect. It's not a kind of crashing header that you can look at for someone who plays in that position. It's edge of the box. It's really great technique. So well done, and it is tense. Of course, it is because there's no more goals. I think Liverpool at the bar. Dirk Kuyt has a goal chopped off in extra time for offside. There are chances, but it's breathless. It's a far better game than the last one, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think Agger had some of those in him. I think he would be one that you would kind of peg as a ball playing centre half before you would really think of that as a thing. He was someone I liked. I think I said this in one of the previous shows. He had a bit of a cultured strike on him. And yeah, I think you're right. I think this was a really good game. A lot going on, like you said, that tension, breathlessness, absorbing encounter for sure. And I think I don't know what you guys thought when it went to penalties. I just assumed Chelsea would win. Maybe that's a bias on a Mourinho thing. I don't know. I know Liverpool are well organised, they're disciplined, they've got great penalty takers. Alonso, Gerrard, Dirk Kuyt, I think, took one as well.
He's winning one, yeah.
But I don't know. I just felt Chelsea, with their mentality they built up over a couple of years. I know they weren't quite.
I didn't. I just think no. Purely because I think that if you're the superior side, and Chelsea were, and it's at Anfield, I just thought, no, this is what Liverpool are going to do. They're going to do it again, and they're going to. I didn't think Chelsea's penalties would be as bad as they were, right enough. But by the way, just as a wee timestamp on things, do you when you watch back the highlights, Daniel Agger, he has a sleeve tattoo and quite a lot of tattoos. And again, back then, I remember thinking how unusual that was because you didn't really see footballers with that many tattoos. These days, if you see a footballer who doesn't have them, it's more peculiar. So again, it's just a wee kind of cultural thing that shifted even in this short space of time. But no, Adam, I don't know. I just thought Liverpool at home, where I haven't thought they were going to do it, and they're on the verge of doing it. I thought, nah, the belief in that stadium will see them through, and the technique you mentioned there. These are guys who can hit penalty kicks. This is not just sending up, 4 scrubs to try and see what they can do. They were very confident and assured in their taking, but you can't legislate for Chelsea missing 2 or 3 penalties.
No, you can't. I mean, the first 2 penalties they're actually very similar. Zenden, 2 left footers, not like that. 2 left footers, Zenden and Robin, and Zenden, absolutely whips it into the kind of side netting. Robin's not far away from doing that. He's just stopped by the goalie. I think it's Jeremy, the other one. That was a very, very poor, poor penalty kick. Yeah, the Mourinho penalty thing, I understand what you mean. This mentality monster, this guy who prepares for absolutely everything. Penalties would become a bit of a problem for him in this competition. Not just with Chelsea here, but with Real Madrid, which we'll get to. It's funny, Anfield, Chelsea with the 3 seasons here, right? They've played Liverpool, obviously, in the league 3 times. They've won twice, handily, actually, 4-1 in one instance. They lost earlier in this season. So it's not as if it's this bogey ground, this really dangerous, weird... but David... under lights, Champions League, it does turn into something different, doesn't it?
It does, and you can't legislate for. You can take into account, but it is very difficult when you're sitting there after now, 3.5 hours of football, and a grinding 3.5 hours of football, and the emotional toll that it takes. And you're right. I mean, in the case of one of these penalties, it's not a terrible penalty. It's a good save, I think. Although again, you would expect a player of Robin's ability to put the ball away. The Jeremy one is a poor penalty, and I just think it's maybe there's a doubt in the back of the Chelsea mind of, is this happening again? Are we going to go out and not get to the final against this side who we have proven over the last few seasons that we are considerably better at football than? And the Liverpool don't have that. They've got the opposite. They've got that stadium. And it's tense, of course, for them as well. It's ridiculous as it's not. But there's maybe just more of a, maybe one's playing with a slight fear and the other's more of a slight, we are going to do this. And I do think the more that we go through this, certain teams in this competition almost puff their chest out a little bit more because of the history that's soaked up in the walls of the stadium and the expectations.
And Chelsea haven't won it.
Chelsea
it's the only thing.
That.
It's the only thing remaining.
And it's also, the owner who could be, he wasn't exactly publicity hungry, but the one thing he had made clear through all, his briefings and his employees is it's this. I want this. This is the reason I'm doing it. I want that. This is the final thing. I think also for Mourinho, won it twice at 2 clubs inside such a short period of time.
Yeah.
That's it. That's any arguments about my greatness are done here and there. But again, look at that Chelsea side. Look at the players who are in it. They know that there's pressure on them, and pressure does strange things to people. You put these 2 squads in a league season, and that Liverpool team is never, ever finishing higher than that Chelsea squad. I mean, that you could replay the league over and over, and it by no simulation does it happen. And it's just that Liverpool in this, really, I had written them off before that second leg, because I thought Chelsea will get at least 1 and Liverpool will need 3, and I don't see them getting 3 against this defence. And I don't think that was a far from mainstream view, really, that if Chelsea get 1, then this is probably done. And they've got all the way through to penalties. They've turned it round. They've got a victory over this very good Chelsea team, incidentally, just on its own. They've got a victory, but they've got through 2 hours without conceding. I think the belief is there, and you see the way they put the penalties away. And also when you look at the names, Adam touched on a great point. You can have better individual players, But if you've got maybe one or two guys in your squad who hit penalties, it'd be interesting to see, for instance, if modern Chelsea were to get, and it's unlikely given the European competition they're in this year, but in the future years, because none of them ever take penalties who are not Cole Palmer for obvious reasons. Jeremy is not someone I would be thinking of going up in the first tranche of players in this Chelsea team. Whereas you look at the four players that Liverpool send up and you think, yeah, they're all going to score. So even though that they're lesser players, when it comes to this particular skill thing, and who knows if this is at the Bridge and the two games have gone there, 1-0s, but the other way around, I would maybe have felt the other way. But I just remember thinking, this is Liverpool, they're going to do this. And also, Adam, the reason I knew Liverpool were going to win is that I bet Chelsea would. So that my reverse Midas touch kicked in again. But no, I, in those circumstances, be it 2007, 2003, 2025, I will always fancy Liverpool in front of their own fans in that stadium in this tournament to get the job done.
Yeah, poor Jeremy. Better with Jeremy Beadle, shouts your dad for the back of the room, struggling to get over his divorce. Chelsea would still have the problems with penalties, but they would get it right eventually. More of that in due course. And Liverpool and Chelsea, as I said, would meet again at the same stage next season with a hell of a lot more goals, as if something had unleashed something within this Chelsea side that made them a lot more carefree and overflowing with attacking verve. Okay, Adam, Old Trafford for two European heavyweights, Manchester United against Milan. Obviously, we'll talk a lot more about how Ferguson has put all this together yet again in the next tranche of shows coming up for 07-08. But where are they at this moment? Obviously, we talked last time about the huge Roma win, but coming into a test like this Milan side that we're going to spend a bit of time really kind of reminiscing about, who are favourites going into this tie at this particular moment in time on their axis?
So I think it's Milan. However, I do think if United had played any of the other two, they'd have been in the final.
Yeah,
personally, I just think where, like you mentioned, where things are for those three British clubs. Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, and it's not a downside, but they come up against the best player in the world at this point, and Kaká, who was sensational in these games, the final this season, the defining factor for me in the revenge in Athens that we'll come on to, and the big difference in what happened in Istanbul versus Athens. But yeah, I think ultimately that's just it. They were just unlucky that they came up against us. We had two great games. The second one is incredible, the weather, considering it must be end of April, start of May in Milan, and it's absolutely pouring it down, which obviously makes for a good spectacle. But yeah, this game, very classic Old Trafford game, I think, under the lights, barnstorming, lots of hard luck, lots of good opportunities from range. Dida even making a couple of decent saves, one from Ronaldo, which was decent after I think there was a deflection or the ball moved in the air. So yeah, a really good game this first leg, definitely. But I think Kaká, as he did so often, was the difference. His goal to open the scoring was really classy. I think I really liked that finish there. And yeah, he was just everywhere. He's just by this point a superstar. He's again someone that if we had if Kaká appeared now, the plaudits he would get instantly would be ridiculous. He would be Mbappe, Vinicius, whoever else, probably rolled into one. As it was, you kind of again we go back to how things were 20 years ago. He appears at AC Milan 21, 22, unheard of, really. And his role for me was unique. He wasn't a number 10. We mentioned that he replaced the kind of Rui Costa, and he played in that position, but he was, I guess you could call it like a central winger. We hadn't really seen anybody in the middle of the pitch running like that, dribbling in that way. Obviously, we would go on to see it, or we were starting to see it happen with Ronaldo. when he would move centrally. But for me, he was the first I can remember at this, just that lightning pace, but also physical and that frame. He was just a full package, and I think he's a deciding factor in this tie for me. But like I said, I think United were just really unlucky that they come up against this Milan team at this point.
Yeah, Kaká goes into my file of these players who would be far more appreciated if it wasn't for the era that we're just about to come to, with two players absolutely dominating football in a way that hasn't been seen really before in terms of consistency.
And the failed Madrid career is held against them, I think.
Yeah, that's fair, but that is light years away from that night. It is Cristiano Ronaldo who gets things up and running. A weird goal, one of the weirdest Ronaldo goals of all time. But United are ahead early, and then Kaká kind of takes that grip of the game. David, the first one looks like an easy goal at training, really, or at fives, or someone just ghosting away, sliding it in, easy as you like. The second is a gift. I think Evra and Heinze, run into one another. Not quite Willie Miller and Alan Hansen, but it's in that ballpark, and he's simply not going to pass up that opportunity.
No.
And 2-1 up away. This is starting to feel very much like a done deal quite early, deflating.
Yeah, I mean, half-time comes 2-1 down, and the manner of the goal, I think you're right, and it's important to point that out. It's one of those ones that, especially in an important game, and especially an away goal in this era, it kind of sucks the air at the stadium, doesn't it? And it's very flat up to half-time. There's, the immediate roar when it goes in, but the defiant, right, come on, lads. But United are a little bit caught in their heels, because 2 away goals, it's big. I think that there's no escaping it. What you have to do is come out in the second half, obviously, and say, right, well, we can't undo that. We need to make sure that we go and try and get a win out of this game. When Rooney gets the goal back, you're thinking, right, okay, we United now momentum, but Milan are still very much in this match. Adam's right, that's a very good football team, and it's a very well organised and disciplined football team as well. But, United in this era, something that I don't think you could say in the modern era or the last 10 years or whatever, but there is almost that sense of inevitability, and then the board goes up with the time, Fergie time kicks in, and you think they're gonna get it, and of course Wayne Rooney does so brilliant, and 3-2. I didn't think it was enough. No. I thought the 2 away goals were big, but psychologically, I think getting that winner might give you a springboard, because this is by no means a dud team, and they also could feel very confident about going to Milan and scoring, simply because that front three they had was terrific at this point with Giggs, Rooney and Ronaldo. And I think there was a feeling the second leg might be a kind of similar game, actually. Might be goals shared, and we'll see who had it. And United are simply a non-event in it. They are, Martin, to quote a phrase I know you like, they are deleted from the pitch. Milan go out, Adam's right, on a filthy, filthy night, which kind of creates this slightly surreal atmosphere for United. It's dark and it's not welcoming. It's almost gothic in a way. And Milan just play them off the park, but they dominate them physically as well. Ferguson had brought Vidic back into the side after injury. He didn't look fit to me. I think he was perhaps concerned, which is not something you would think of English teams playing Italian teams nowadays. But and even in this period, I think he's concerned about the physicality, and that's why Vidic comes back into the side. But United are Rooney cannot control a ball in the second leg. Anything that's going up to him is coming off him. It's like a pinball machine up there. Giggs isn't in the match at all. Ronaldo's quite subdued, quite quiet, and they are dominated in the middle of the park. It was anticlimactic as a neutral, because, as I say, I was sort of expecting, this might be a 2-2 or whatever. We'll get twists and turns in this game, and what we don't, we get a routine home victory. If you didn't know the two sides, you would think this was a big team versus a smaller team, because United just do not perform at all. It's not even that you could say they were bad; they were just ineffective all over the field.
Yeah, before we get to that second leg, can I just ask Adam, 3 years, I mean, Rooney's winner at Old Trafford, I think, is stunning. 3 years since his introduction, where is he in the galaxy of stars of football in 2007, and the way that football is perhaps developing? Because in the next few years, he's going to do a lot of thankless tasks, a lot of working hard, I think possibly to the detriment of his long-term career. But where is it at the moment?
Yeah, I think he's one of those, isn't he, where it feels like he's been about for ages at this point. To be honest, when he signed for United, it felt like he'd been about for ages, even though it was only, what was that, 18 months at the time, if that. I think it's a tricky one because this team, this third Ferguson team, if you like, isn't getting built round about Rooney. Really, it's not at all. There's 3 of them, like David mentioned, and soon to be a fourth, and Carlos Tevez. So I guess he kind of shares the burden, but then, like you said, he then gets shunted out wide left for a bit, doesn't he? And he comes back into midfield at points as well. And yeah, I think if it was a different type of team or a different type of setup and he was the undisputed main man, I think you might have seen a different career, which is ridiculous. I hate when people say, actually, in a way, Wayne Rooney was underrated, or Wayne Rooney should have achieved more, because it's just such a ridiculous concept. But I can kind of see it sometimes, because you think the amount of games he played, the talent he had, how he appeared like a heavyweight boxer at 16, and sort of kept maturing. It's not unrealistic to think he could have, if he had been the main man in the way that maybe Van Nistelrooy was 5 or 6 years before that, just the undisputed guy there. I think it might have been interesting, but that takes nothing away from how amazing this attack is that they're building. I think they had a couple of poor years in the transfer market at the turn of the millennium, which was spoken about, and then they just sort of started building and bringing in a solid player and one a year, if you like, and just sort of keeping going and trying to build this evolution of a team rather than the kind of artificial quick buck that Chelsea were doing. So I appreciated that part of it, but yeah, there's maybe a little bit of Rooney there that he might have thrived being the undisputed star, but his type of personality, his temperament, his work ethic, I think were fantastic for the team. So for me, I think he's probably he's the best player at this point for me, 100%. Cristiano Ronaldo is still a little bit show pony-ish at points, certainly this season. Ryan Giggs is always going to be there, which is fair enough. And then when Tevez comes in, he adds another dimension. But yeah, Rooney's still the man as far as I'm concerned. But I think there's an element of sacrificing himself for the good of the team, which I can appreciate. But maybe, be interesting to see if things had went differently.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about, I think, an even brighter spot in Rooney's career. Funnily enough, in the same stadium, in the San Siro, maybe just a few years later, but he fell pretty rapidly off a cliff for injury reasons. But we'll come to that in due course. David, you're absolutely right. Milan just run riot in disgraceful conditions, as we said, almost as if the game should not be played in the San Siro like that. It's almost sacrilege. It's a disgrace to its very name. But you would know, looking at them, that the conditions were difficult because they're just playing their game. Vidic, whom I love, as I think anyone really would, has a torrid old time here. Kaká especially, very, very early, just easily moving, shifting gear and getting away from markers. But even his finish is not a tap-in, that's from the edge of the box, drilled in the low. Seedorf, very, very similar. United have a wee spell in between, by the way, where they do respond, but that's the killer before half-time.
Yes, as I just the confidence. Adam mentioned it there about this Milan side, the way they're playing at this point. I mentioned there, I thought this would be a tight and close game with goals. It was neither. It really wasn't. They were just superb, unruffled in the way they went about their business. And I think that with United, especially in the second half, the amount of misplaced passes, and there's a fair old amount of arms being thrown up in there. You know, that frustration where the individual player is having a bit of a mare, but so are his teammates, and they're all looking at each other on this huge occasion, on this massive stage in this famous stadium, and they're not performing. I think that's the biggest frustration for any sportsman, when you just don't perform at your level, whereas Milan do. But there is a confidence and a certainty in this Milan performance. It's definitive. It's we are going. Adam mentioned we are going to play our game. Opposition and conditions be damned. We are going to go out and they utilise their strength perfectly. Kaká in the middle of the park is brilliant. Wanting the ball, constantly there to make things happen. But he's ably supported by a team that were very slick and confident in the passing. Very slick and confident. And United on this night, because they're a far better side than they show on this night, they simply can't live with that. What you're seeing from the Milan side is control. I suppose I'm going around a lot of words, but that's the one I think I'm searching for. It's control. And United needed to hold the ball a lot better, as you do in any European. It doesn't matter if it's a semi-final. In any European match, the key element is about retaining, when you do get the ball, not giving it up easily, not inviting pressure. United constantly do this night. It's a reactive game they play because they're not at any point really able to put a sustained spell of pressure on this Milan side, who I don't want to say they never get out of third gear, because that would be unfair. But you did feel that if it got a little bit more frantic, that they would still have been able to cope with it and step up a little bit. For me, this is a very good Milan performance, and they deserve credit. But we're a British podcast, so we tend to look at it through the British eyes. And United, they had disappointing semi-final performances before under Ferguson, but I would actually class this leg as one of the worst, maybe with Dortmund in '97, because I think that United just did not in any way represent what they were. They were not a side who domestically were in the hole that they'd been in the previous year or whatever. They were, as Adam said, building something. They were capable of far better than this. But when you have Giggs, Ronaldo and Rooney up front and they can't keep the ball between them, that's an off night. And that is a very strange one, but it happens at the worst time. Maybe the end of the season, Martin, running out of steam. We've seen it before with English teams in Europe. That Milan by this stage of the season haven't played anywhere near the same amount of games as United have. But it's a bit of a chasing, really. And if you watch the footage at the end and the Milan players are celebrating, the United players, it's just resignation, because they know they have not been anywhere near what they needed to be going in there. And it's a shame, because had United, I still think Milan might probably have done it, because as I say, they were a very good side in very good form at home. But I think that we were kind of done as neutrals out of what could have been a classic semi-final, and what we got was just a routine home victory for a very good side.
And just watching that, Adam, and again, we'll talk in depth about that when we come back for 07-08. But to go from that evening, where David's right, they were absolutely swatted away overall, to being as impressive as they would be just the season later, champions of Europe, and some of the performance they put in over the next few years to come. Although they didn't win it, being 2 finals, but it's still very, very impressive in getting to those finals, and just how quickly that leap can be made from that particular night. But no finalist this time around. It would be Liverpool and Milan again. Obviously, a lot of talk of Istanbul in the run-up to the final in Athens. Right. Adam, this Milan side on the evening, Dida, Now, Maldini moving into central defence with Alessandro Nesta, and Jankulovski and Odo, the fullbacks. Again, perhaps not names that resonate through the ages, like some other members of Milan's defences before have done. And the midfield has Seedorf, Ambrosini, who has worn the armband when Maldini's not been available quite often through this campaign. Pirlo and Gattuso, Kaká and Inzaghi. Not a lot of natural width. Is that coming from the fullbacks? How does that midfield look, and how different is this from Istanbul?
So the big difference is the fullbacks. I think, like you mentioned there, Jankulovski was one of those guys who, liken him to Zambrotta, who playing Championship Manager. He could play right wing, right back, left back. But I think definitely
that
at this
brought back
point,
memories, mate. That brought back memories.
Yeah, definitely at this point, he gives the team what they had been missing, if you like. That 2003 final that they won, which was the start of this evolution, if you like. Ancelotti's been there 5 or 6 seasons now, and it is building brick by brick, changing a fair amount. Even from the 2005 final, there's 3 or 4 players that didn't play in that game that now play here. For example, Shevchenko leaving, Odo and Jankulovski, like we mentioned. So that they're building something, but they're tweaking, and that's what I really like about this Milan team, and also just what we've spoken about with Manchester United. You mentioned they just appear next year. In actual fact, there's building blocks being put in. They've got their defence sorted out a couple of years before. They're adding the midfield is kind of there. They've got Rooney and Ronaldo coming in. They're adding Tevez. I like that incremental growth of a squad and of a team that we maybe don't get as much of now, unless you're an elite team that can afford to not have your players poached. But for me, this Milan, this evolution, if you want to call it their third evolution in 5 years, here I think this is definitely the best one. Because you've got those fullbacks giving you the width that maybe they didn't have before. It was more 4 centre halves, and at times it felt like it was 4 centre halves and five centre mids and Shevchenko up front, which was great. Obviously, they're intelligent players. Pirlo, Seedorf, Gattuso, Ambrosini, they can all play, they can all rotate, but yeah, sometimes you just need a little bit different. I think the fullbacks gave them that. Cafu obviously was here at this point. He didn't play the final, but that was the role, if you like. The Odo took on that sort of marauding right back, and the fullbacks provided that width. So I think that was the big difference for me. The other difference, not that they really missed him, was Shevchenko going. We discussed he went to Chelsea, obviously, and that could have been seen as a big gap. Inzaghi had struggled with injuries for a couple of years. He is back now, but he's getting older. Doesn't score loads of goals this year. Gilardino, actually, who's the other option for Milan as a striker, he scores more goals than Inzaghi this year, which I think really helps. If Shevchenko's going and there's that big gap, and you're thinking, right, Inzaghi's the man, he's getting on a little bit, could really do with someone who's going to come in and not make a fuss and not care if they're first choice, but just come in and score some important goals. He scored the third goal in the semi-final, and he did a really good season for Milan, so that really helps in there as well. So yeah, I think they're still as solid as we spoke about in the middle. I would say it's the Christmas tree formation here. I don't think it's changed too much. So you've got that back 4. You've got Pirlo kind of as the sitter with Ambrosini and Gattuso flanking him as a kind of midfield 3. You've then got, I would say, Seedorf and Kaká playing behind Inzaghi, but it's kind of fluid. They're not quite twin number 10s, if you like. Seedorf would drop deep. Kaká would go up and play beside Inzaghi at points, so that worked quite nicely. And like I said, they're intelligent players, so you've got Gattuso and Ambrosini who can run, can pass, can rotate, can sit in and pick the ball from the defence, are more than happy going beyond as well and trying to link in. So yeah, I think it was just a really, really well balanced team, and I definitely think this is my favourite out of these 3 Milan teams that we've spoken about, that 2003, 2005 and 2007, just because of the balance of it. And then when it comes down to it, you've got Kaká there, who's the difference maker. So yeah, really a really enjoyable team, this one.
Okay, and Liverpool then, David, Pepe Reina, I think it makes a difference to that Liverpool team, regardless of the fact that, Dudek, one of the heroes of Istanbul, Steve Finnan and Yonan Arisa, their fullbacks with Agger and Carragher, we mentioned before. Xavi Alonso and Javi Mascherano at the base, with Gerrard behind Dirk Kuyt, Zenden on the left, and Jermaine Pennant on the right-hand side. And you mentioned in the previous show just how consistent he was in this particular season from memory.
But he was their highest tender, highest
turned up.
He got a long service medal.
His name was definitely the register.
He was allowed in. He's actually really good.
We'll get to the final in a minute. There's a great, I think it's a series, I think on Amazon, might be another streamer, apologies, on the Premier League, and it's around about this time. So it's I think maybe from Abramovich one, can't remember. But Pennant is one of the focus of one of these films, just about this career that has so much potential and couldn't be realised because of
his
personality plus opportunities, money, blah blah blah. But it's very, very interesting and tragic in a sense. Where does this Liverpool side compare? How does it compare with the side that won so miraculously 2 years before?
I think it has more options on the bench. It's got Crouch and it's got Bellamy on the bench, who can come on and give you a bit more in terms of attacking. But if you look at that side again, what comes through is solidity. Even Kuyt being used as a striker, he wasn't always used as a striker by Liverpool. He was often used out in the channels, and had been turned into more of a workhorse forward under Benítez than people who maybe didn't see him at Feyenoord would maybe be surprised by the type of player that he was there. But he had been a willing runner, and he had great pace, of course, terrific stamina. But I think it tells you a little something about how they're approaching the game. There's a lot of muscle in that side. It's got a very solid centre. Mascherano makes an enormous difference, Martin. He was a quality player. And of course, you look at his career, it was steps up each time, wasn't it? West Ham, Liverpool, Barcelona. That'll get the listeners frothing, saying that Barcelona was a step up from Liverpool. It was at this time. But yeah, it's a solid side. You can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure that in the centre of the park, they're not being left short. You've also got in Zenden someone who has that ability to open up a side going forward, has a wonderful passer of the ball as well, but he will drop in if you need him to. And, Pennant, Gerrard, him, they're your creative guys. They're the guys that are going to provide you for something. But it's, like I say, when you look at a side, certain words just pop it and form in your mind. And with that one, it's solid, which pops in my mind, which is maybe not the most inspiring word that you'll ever get. But you can see what they were doing, and it had worked for them because they're in the second final in 3 years. But I do think Mascherano and Alonso is in that area of the field is a partnership that I think a lot of teams would have quite gladly taken. You do have good passers of the ball, people who can use the ball. And that, after what we've just discussed with what we watched in Manchester, or in Milan with Manchester United, I think you can again understand the logic behind it. And against a Milan team that maybe wasn't quite so star-studded as the one we'd seen a couple of years before, but yet, as Adam says, is stronger in key areas. And Liverpool's plan, I think Liverpool's plan in this game, it has to involve scoring first. And we're going to come up, obviously, to the match itself. To concede when they do the opener, and the way they concede it with a needless foul is criminal. And you kind of felt this night there's not going to be that road back in, and barring one absolutely wonderful chance that there wasn't. But yeah, you just look at the two sides, and as I say, not quite as as star-filled as it had previously been, that Milan side, but yet balanced and confident, and their weaker areas are dealt with. And there isn't a lot in that Liverpool side that you think is likely to grab a hold of the game. It was a reactive side, deliberately so. I'm going to go, but it was a reactive side. But the ghosts of 2 years are there, so who knows? And that was very much my view going into it. I thought Milan, I fancied Milan, but again, you cannot write this Liverpool side off. To get to one final with this kind of squad and win it was incredible. But to 2 years later turn up and get to another final, that I think to me makes it that almost raises even the Istanbul. And how fitting, by the way, that this final's in Athens. You know, the first one's in Turkey, the second one's in Greece. It's almost like they're trying to mirror image. It's a perfect set of opposites. But yeah, going into it, I thought that for Liverpool to win this one, they had to score first.
And I'm interested in your thoughts on the game itself, then, given what David said, how Liverpool look and how they kind of set up what the plan must be. As time's gone on, there's been a slight narrative that, right, Istanbul was a freak. Milan absolutely wiped the floor with Liverpool in that first half. It just was a crazy night. You know, it all levelled out in Athens 2 years later. I'm not entirely sure that's correct. Liverpool have more of the play in that first half, more of the chances, more of the intent. Jermaine Pennant is a threat, not a sentence I thought I would be saying when we started doing the show, but he is, and in the right-hand side. Liverpool, I think, are mainly on top in that first half. Now, for another project, I'm currently living in the World Cup of 1982, where every team shot from 40 yards. Whenever they had the ball, they would just let fly. There's probably a bit too much of that, Adam, with Liverpool, especially the captain, who seems to want to shoot on sight all the time, and then when he's presented with a great chance, slide rule ball into the box, he can't in the second half. But I think Liverpool more than equipped themselves well. David's right, silly foul on the edge of the box, free kick with Pirlo around. People Inzaghi is going to score 2 goals in this final, Adam. 2 of the most People Inzaghi goals of all time. The first one is as scabby as all hell. No way that's allowed now, I don't think. That's handball, no?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with your assessment on the first half. I think I read something about Peter Crouch earlier on today that he was raging he didn't start the game because he'd started most of the games leading up to it and went a little bit defensive, as is Benítez's want, I guess. I'm not sure it would have made too much of a difference, to be honest, in terms of the overall approach. But yeah, I can understand why he fancies these chances. The Gerrard chance that you mentioned, I think if such an easy comparison there, Kaká would take that chance on his left foot.
Yep.
He did so at Old Trafford. And I think that's the big difference there, where Gerrard wants to just that split second to get on his right.
Change his shape, right?
Yeah, and it just almost like digs it out with his heel, kind of. Just goes into the middle of the middle of the ground. So just those small margins, I think. To David's point earlier on, it would have been very interesting if Liverpool had taken the lead, or if they'd even equalised. Just because I know people don't. I watched something with Paolo Maldini earlier on today, and he said it wasn't about revenge. How can it not be? How can it not be? Yeah. You're footballers, but you're human as well. I feel like revenge is always seen as like a dirty thing, isn't it? Like classless, but you're bringing yourself down to some base desire or something. But personally, I don't have any.
Yeah, I think there's a feeling then that if you're saying it about revenge, it's doing it for a negative reason rather than just we want to win, the Champions League for the achievement that it is, and we want to win it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it doesn't matter what what your reasons are, as long as you win it. And if you can take fuel out of surely revenge is just another iteration of remember how we felt walking past that trophy.
It's never happening again. It's never happening again.
I don't have a problem with that at all.
I guess where the warning label would be is when people are consumed by it, and
You go too
therefore
far
they
and you lose
can't. Well, they can't. If they go too far, they just lose control. They maybe lose
Desperation
sight.
comes in.
They lose sight of the best game plan.
Yeah.
They lose their head in key moments because they're utterly obsessed with this particular opponent, and we've seen that in sport all the way. But you're absolutely right. How can that not be part of the mindset?
Yeah,
and
it's that fine. It's that fine line. It's the control aspect of it. The best teams, can have the better players. They can spend the most money, have the best managers, but ultimately those teams and players want it more than the opposition. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever helps you get to that point in a controlled way is absolutely fine by me. So I get Maldini wants to be a statesman and all that sort of stuff and saying it wasn't about revenge, but I think I've got no doubt that fueled guys like Gattuso 100%. The Inzaghi stuff, again, just such a fascinating player. There's an interview with him where he had a bit of a joke about that first goal, that it was a free kick routine because he'd scored quite a few goals like that season. I mean, he did say obviously it's lucky, but what he did say I think was quite insightful was he knew how Pirlo took those free kicks, so he wanted to get in the way of it just to cause something to happen. And it just goes back to what we've said about Inzaghi over the years. The master of a deflection or being in the right place at the right time, but it's not by accident. He's playing the percentages. He knew where that ball would go, so he's going to position himself in the best way to cause confusion, disrupt it, take advantage, whatever. And it's obviously fortuitous, but he's the only player putting himself in that area. So fair play. But yeah, like you said, it's probably a bit. I don't think it'd be given now, but it is at the time.
Alonso, though, I thought was barging into silly fouls a lot in that first half. I don't know, maybe just over pumped. Maybe just right. I know how good their midfield is. I need to put myself about. This is a daft. He doesn't need to concede it, and it's a little bit of game management. I think you're just coming up to the end of the half. You get in at 0-0. I think that's pretty much Liverpool's game plan is going absolutely fine. Because again, I go back to look what they've got on the bench to come on. In terms of Crouch and Bellamy, you've got different things that can come on if this game is tight towards the end. That could be difference makers for different reasons. Bellamy's pace, obviously, and getting Crouch's height gives you different options. So yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate goal to concede. As you say, Martin, I don't think it would stand now. But yeah, don't put yourself in that position. And it wasn't the first time in the half he did that. He was, I think, very concerned about not allowing them time on the ball. But we all know
that's exactly it.
Yeah, but as soon as they feel contact, they're going to go down, and that's what happened. And maybe there's an element also. Maybe tactically it was a thing of break play up and don't let them get settled into the passing rhythm. We've seen that before. But yeah, Adam used the perfect word difference. Again, I loved it. Disruptor.
Alonso on the ball, though, I thought was very good in that Liverpool midfield. Gerrard, David, I think this is Gerrard at his worst. Try to do absolutely everything from miles out. It's the kind of performance that I think had Benítez pulling whatever was left of his hair out because of that kind of tactical and discipline. I think, again, Liverpool was still obviously chasing that equaliser, could have got it. But the second goal, late on, of course, but 8-9 minutes to go, Inzaghi sent through, rounds the goalkeeper, does that.
Tight angle.
It was a tight angle. It's very, very well done. But as much as the Captain Chaos of the first goal, that's also Inzaghi's bread and butter. And at this moment in football time, and for pretty much almost as long as we've been doing this show, whether at Juve or Milan, there are few, if any, better than him at that.
No, correct. The old offside joke, it's because he's on the shoulder and he's, especially late in a game when the urge is to push a little bit forward, but not just the urge, the imperative is to push a little bit forward. And he's constantly looking at, and it's a wonderful ball, incidentally. from Kaká. So you've got a guy who can find them, and then the finish is just terrific. And again, it's that what the great goal scorers have, Martin, which is the early decision. This is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to peel off into this area. He'll find me, and then I'm going around him. And it seems almost all played out. And the angle is just another thing that's in the equation and gets dealt with in a goal. And it did seem over and done with at this point. Gerrard, here is a problem with, I think, mythologizing things without context and allowing it to become almost a received wisdom. The mythology of Istanbul is that Gerrard comes out and single-handedly gets Liverpool going again. And he does get the first goal, as we know, but and the penalty, but it wasn't like that. That wasn't the only factor. And I think in this game, he's kind of bought into that. And I think he thinks that the only way that Liverpool can win is if he gives this Roy of the Rovers performance, if he can just go out there and, as you say, he's going to be taking things on. Because he's a special player and special things happen when he's there. The Olympiacos goal, the season they won it, of course, is a great example of that. But yeah, to me, he's not playing with his head. And this is a tactical match. This is a tactical era, but this is a very tactical match. He has a job to do, and this night he doesn't really do it. Now, you won't find a single Liverpool fan out there, and as a Rangers fan, I'm reluctant to criticise him, but it wasn't what was needed. You're right about the shooting. I think you've said before, and you're right. When Gerrard's at his worst, he's shooting he's like a basketball player, with 3 seconds on the clock. He's trying, the Chelsea game where he slipped is the case in point, where he was cannoning shots from 40 yards trying to make up for it. But it is to the detriment of the team. He needs to be calmer. He needs to play within the role and within the system. But I do think that there was perhaps a touch of, how did we win that first game? We won it by, I came out at the set, I gave this speech at halftime, and then I came out in the second half and I turned into Brian Robson 85 and just ran at them and they couldn't cope. So I'm going to do that all night rather than for one half, but it doesn't work. And they don't make a lot of great chances, but they do get into a lot of good positions, and he wastes them quite often by the wrong move. A wee bit of patience, and he's hurried. And then, of course, if you want to talk about, mentality and where his head's at, when the chance does come, doesn't take it, and he really should have.
Adam, Liverpool do get a goal late on. Dirk again, I'm not entirely sure that would stand today. It looked very tight.
He's off. He is off.
Regardless, it was immaterial. Milan held out. But that's us, really, for Milan, isn't it, Adam? We're not going to be talking about them in the danger end of this tournament. I think for the rest of the time we're going to do it. Their great rivals will pop up soonish, and we'll explain the reasons maybe why that is. But why such a decline?
I think we've mentioned Calciopoli here, which undeniably has a factor on sponsorship, TV money, all that sort of stuff. They got out of it relatively lightly at 8-point deduction, I think, this season, which put them out of the title race, but maybe certainly wasn't as severe as a couple of other teams. Got. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit of that. I also think it's the end of another cycle here. If you like, they've got these great players, like we mentioned, absolutely, but they've all been there for these 5 years at least, and in a few of their cases quite a bit longer than that. So yeah, they do not go on to have a very good season the season after either. They finish fifth there. Ancelotti, I don't know, to his credit, to his detriment, he does hang around until 2009 before he pops up at Chelsea, I'm sure. But yeah, I think we're now just starting to see that shift as well. Maybe it would have happened anyway. Maybe Calciopoli is a factor, but 3 British teams in the semi-finals, the thirst that there was for an all-British final, I think, in the media when we had 2 on one side, and then obviously the Man United Milan game was huge. They would get their wish, or they will get their wish the year after. So I think that balance of power is shifting, and the only ones with the financial might to stop it or at least compete with it are in Spain. So I think the Milan demise probably ties in quite nicely with that general Serie A demise, which hasn't got back to where it should at all. Other than a season or so, like we mentioned, you'll get a season that'll come out like Inter or maybe Napoli. Later on, I've had a decent one, but yeah, I think that's a shame. That's pretty much it, because the Italian teams have dominated for those 15 years that we've been doing it, and none more so than Milan. So yeah, we pretty much bid them farewell, certainly from the latter stages of the tournament.
And these days, the league isn't set up to win the Champions League, and by that, what I mean is it's a different type of football. It is. It's exciting and it's fun to watch, and there's a lot of goals in it, despite the fact that every British commentator, whenever an Italian team plays an English team, seems to think that they're going to be defensive. If you watch Serie A, you'll know that they can't defend. They're very bad at it. But the reason is that if you look at, as we record, Scott McTominay is probably on for Player of the Year in Italy right now. And Scott McTominay is a good player, but the reason he is so dominant there is his physicality. And when they get to the last 4 of the Champions League and they're up against sides from England and Spain, they struggle badly. They cannot deal, to use a cliche, these are sides that can, Bayern Munich, etc., they can outrun them, as well as obviously having the high technical level. So Italian football at the moment just isn't geared up to.
I think that's a really good point as well. And you think about Italian teams of the past, you think about pragmatic, solid defence, tactical. Pragmatism and defending are pretty much gone from.
Yeah, they're out the window now.
Certainly at the higher level. So if you take that out of Italian teams who could be stuffy, would have a good striker and a solid defence, if you take that solid defence out and you don't replace it with, like you mentioned, lots of money or pace and physicality, then you're not really left with something that can compete at the top end. Yeah.
Okay, that does us for 06, 07, gentlemen. Shows your medals. I get that, and I completely accept the balanced argument, Adam, for this Milan team. But what happened in Istanbul was a freak. It was one of those things. I think that was just an exceptional team. If that second half peters off into the distance and Milan win 3-1, they would be considered, I think, one of the greatest teams ever to win the Champions League, because they were just so dynamic and explosive, and absolutely loved that side. But that's a funny old game, as someone once said. Thank you, David.
Pleasure as always, guys.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
And it is England's turn next time in 07-08, and we'll get into all of that in due course. Until then, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.